Is the world's most populous country heading for a demographic crisis?
For the first time in decades, China's population has declined by 850,000 people, according to official numbers.
China has a problem. Its young people aren't having enough children.
那你们会想要小孩吗？
不会。
不会。
This demographic shift will have massive consequences, not just for China, but globally.
For many centuries, China has been the world's most populous country and India the second most populous country. It is only now, in April of this year, India will overtake China in population. While India's population will continue to grow for many more decades, China's population and along with that its economy is about to collapse. And collapse might be the right word to describe how steep the decline might be.
Well, you're saying that China has 10 years to go.
At most.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we now know that they've lied about their population statistics, and they overcounted their population by over 100 million people, all of whom would have been born since the one-child policy was adopted. So there's no version of this where China comes through looking good, because they are going away. And they're going away this decade for certain.
China's National Bureau of Statistics on January 17th announced a decline of 850,000 people to a new population of 1.41 billion. The first such decline in 60 years since the 3 years of famine caused by Mao Zedong's disastrous Great Leap Forward industrial policy. The world knew something like this was going to happen, but it's happening much sooner than expected. Until very recently, leading Chinese scholars and United Nations estimated that such a decline would only start in early 2030s. But population decline is only the beginning. China has many more very serious problems.
And so what are the other problems that they're encountering that leads you to believe that they only have 10 years left?
Well, without young people, we've seen their labor costs increase by a factor of 14 since the year 2000. So Mexican labor is now 1/3 the cost of Chinese labor. Their educational system focuses on memorization over skills, so despite $1 trillion of investment in a bottomless supply of intellectual property theft, they really haven't advanced technologically in the last 15 years. They've consolidated into an ethnic-based, paranoid, nationalistic cult of personality, and it's very difficult for the Xi administration to even run it because it's not an administration anymore. No one wants to bring Xi information on anything. So, like, Putin lied to his face, for example, last February about the war, saying, why would I invade Ukraine? So we now have tech barricades that prevent the Chinese from buying the equipment, the tools, or the software that's necessary to make semiconductors. In fact, he went so far as to say any Americans working in the sector have to either quit or give up their American citizenship. So the tech system is stalled. They don't have the young people to go consumption-led. They're completely dependent on the U.S. Navy to access international trade. They are the most vulnerable country in the world right now. And based on how things go with Russia, we're looking at a significant amount of raw materials falling off the map, specifically food and energy. And the Chinese are the world's largest importer of both of those things. So there's no version of this where China comes through looking good, because they are going away. And they're going away this decade for certain.
Many experts, I think, agree that the future of China is very worrying, to put it mildly. And that's a concern for the entire world, not just for the Chinese who want to get their old glory back. In the 2000s, China had a large population of cheap workers who were seen by Americans as taking global jobs. However, the Chinese government saw them as driving consumption and overturning global norms. Both were right, but not anymore. 20 years later, not only is everyone 20 years older, but the Chinese had far fewer kids during the intervening 20 years. China's labor costs are now skyrocketing, and in productivity adjusted terms are well below American workers. The retirement age in China is probably the lowest in the world at 54 years, and many Chinese are going into retirement. China today is the fastest aging society in human history, and that means there are too few young people of working age supporting too many retired people. This is disastrous for the country because it will literally kill the economy. The UN has released a startling new projection for China's population, with no scenario in which it doesn't decline. In the best case scenario, the population falls by a fifth. In the base case, it declines by 46% to 779 million, and in the worst case, it falls to 494 million by the end of this century. This is a major revision for the UN's projections from 20 years ago, which projected China's population to rise from 1.28 billion in 2001 to 1.43 billion in 2021 and continue to rise to a peak of 1.45 billion in 2031. The main reason for this change can be found in the most recent birth data published by China's National Bureau of Statistics, which shows a significant drop in births since 2016, despite the implementation of a two-child policy starting that year. There is no negotiating or state governmenting this away. Even if the Chinese state puts all the women in camps and force them to have multiple kids, the first impact in the labor force wouldn't be for 25 years. All this is happening because China crammed 200 years of industrialization and urbanization into a single generation. Of course, that generated massive economic growth, but it absolutely destroyed birth rates.
Mao was concerned that as the country was modernizing, the birth rate wasn't dropping fast enough and that the young generation was literally going to eat the country alive. So they went through a breakneck urbanization program which destroyed the birth rate. At the same time, they penalized anyone who wanted to have kids. And both of those at the same time have generated the demographic collapse we're in now.
China's economic growth in the 1970s to the early 2000s was in part due to rising age of working age adults to children and older citizens. The latter longer, fewer campaign and one-child policy implemented by the Chinese government in the 1970s and 80s was successful in reducing fertility rates and slowing population growth. This led to a demographic shift where there were fewer children and older citizens and more working age adults. With fewer mouths to feed, parents were able to invest more in each child than they otherwise would have. This led to an increase in human capital, as parents were able to invest in their children's education, health, and well-being. The increase in human capital led to an increase in productivity, which contributed to China's economic growth. Additionally, a large working age population also led to an increase in savings and investments, which further supported economic growth. Moreover, the increase in the working age population also led to an increase in the size of the labor force, which helped to drive economic growth by increasing productivity and output. As a result of this demographic shift, China's economy experienced rapid growth and modernization, making it the world's second largest economy today. One of the main drivers of China's population decline is the country's later, longer, fewer campaign and one-child policy, which were implemented in the 1970s and 80s to control population growth. These policies were successful in reducing fertility rates, but they also led to an aging population. The number of Chinese of working age peaked a decade ago, and by 2050, the country's median age is projected to be 51, 12 years higher than it is now. An aging population has several economic and political consequences for China. As the population ages, there will be fewer working age adults to support elderly, which can put a strain on the country's social security and healthcare systems. Additionally, an aging population can lead to a decline in the labor force, which can negatively impact economic growth. China's economic growth in the past was driven in part by large and growing population, which provided a large pool of cheap labor and consumer demand. However, with a declining population, this source of economic growth may be less available. Population decline can also have political consequences. As the population ages, there may be a shift in political priorities towards issues related to the elderly, such as pension and healthcare. Additionally, population decline may lead to a decline in the country's global influence and power, as other countries with growing populations like India may overtake China in terms of economic and political power. In addition to these, there can be a change in the gender ratio, with more men than women, which can lead to social issues. The shortage of marriageable women can lead to increased competition for partners, and in some cases, the trafficking of women. Demography may not be fate, but it certainly plays a role in shaping the course of history. Population decline is rarely a good thing either. The rise of Britain and the US to positions of global dominance in the 19th and 20th centuries were both associated with rapid population growth. So the slowing of that growth is not something to be celebrated. The Chinese government has acknowledged for the first time that the country's population will start to shrink before 2025. Experts have long argued that China's official birth statistics should not be trusted, and the Shanghai Police Department accidentally leaked records of over 1 billion Chinese citizens supports this claim. Yi Fuxian, a demographer from the University of Wisconsin at Madison, has stated that China's real population is likely smaller than the official figures of 1.41 billion and could be as low as 1.28 billion. And that means India is already the most populous country in the world. Thanks for staying till the end. If you liked this video, you will also like this one. And please subscribe. It's really encouraging to see subscriber numbers go up. I'm Sharat Mantrawadi. Thanks for watching.